This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. I'm Sophie Ikenye. Our top stories. A BBC News investigation has uncovered that Google and Apple are enabling an online slave market for African domestic workers in the Gulf, some in their teens.
The employer thinking that they own already the worker, but it shouldn't be.
Hope fades of finding survivors after a deadly landslide killed over 40 people in Cameroon. Also in the program, teetering on the brink, South Africa braces itself for a credit rating review, hoping to avoid a downgrade to junk status.
So if we get a downgrade, that means we're going to take a huge punch. That means in the business, in order for us to survive, we need to pass it on to the consumer.
And ahead of the Rugby World Cup final in Japan, we hear from the Springboks captain, Siya Kolisi. Does he feel the weight of history on his shoulders? Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. An investigation by BBC News has discovered African domestic workers being sold on the black market in Kuwait using Instagram or apps available on Google and Apple. Now, the investigation found hundreds of women, including a child of 16 from Guinea, being traded by their employers without their knowledge or consent. There are no accurate statistics, but several million women from Africa and Asia work as maids in the Middle East. Thousands are trafficked from West Africa, East Africa, and the Horn of Africa. Jess Kelly reports.
In the Gulf, women employed as domestic workers are being sold online via apps approved and provided by Google and Apple. BBC News Arabic went undercover in Kuwait to expose this shocking and disturbing online trade. It's a trade made possible by Silicon Valley tech giants.
If Google, Apple, Facebook, or any other company is promoting apps like these, hosting apps like these, they are promoting an online slave market.
The BBC team spoke to 57 users of an app called For Sale. It's available on Google Play and the Apple App Store. Domestic workers are sold on For Sale alongside cars and TVs. The team found violations of domestic and international laws on modern slavery and human trafficking. Most women have no idea they're being advertised for sale online. One app user tried to sell a child to our team. And another, a policeman, encouraged them to break Kuwaiti laws. In the Gulf, a domestic worker's visa is tied to their sponsor. They cannot quit their job or leave the country without their sponsor's permission.
That's the problem with that kind of system, is that the employer thinking that they own already the worker, but it shouldn't be the situation.
Kuwait has some of the strongest laws to protect domestic workers in the region. But apps like For Sale, Instagram, and in Saudi, Haraj, enable employers to sell the sponsorship of these workers for a profit.
احنا حاليا في حرب مع هذه العمليه. الويب سايتات، الابلكيشنز اللي الشبيهه لهذا الموضوع، هذه قاعد نجهز لها صيغ قانونيه.
No legal action has been taken against the policeman or the woman who tried to sell us a child. They both declined the BBC's request for comment. For Sale has now removed its domestic workers section. They gave us the following reply.
The allegations are appalling and ones that For Sale completely condemns. For Sale is committed to running its business ethically and in line with the relevant laws and regulations in Kuwait.
Kuwait's government didn't comment further. Facebook, which owns Instagram, told us,
"Following an investigation, we have banned the hashtag Khadimat Littanazul as much of the content violated our policies. We also removed 703 violating accounts."
but we found hundreds of posts on Instagram using similar hashtags being used to sell domestic workers. Apps in other countries are still offering domestic workers for sale. Haraj, the commodity app used in Saudi Arabia, did not provide us with a statement. Both Google and Apple told the BBC that this type of behaviour has no place on their application stores, and that they are working with app developers to better prevent illegal activity like this on their platforms. Jess Kelly, BBC News.
Well, I'm now joined by Kimberly Motley, a lawyer who has taken up the case of the 16-year-old in that story and is seeking compensation. Thanks for taking time to talk to us on Focus on Africa. How is the girl you're representing doing?
She's doing as best as she can. Unfortunately, she was working under very grueling conditions in Kuwait. And so she had quite a bit of medical issues that she had to overcome. But she's doing as well as she can and trying to get back into going to school and, focused on becoming a doctor at some point.
Now, you're seeking compensation for her. From whom exactly are you?
Well, I'm seeking compensation, but also criminal charges should be launched. I believe at the basic level, anyone that was involved in trafficking her in Kuwait or Guinea, they should be criminally charged and frankly should be in prison. I believe the app developers, especially with For Sale, that they should definitely provide compensation for Fatu, as well as possibly Apple and Google. On Apple Store, they proclaim that everything on their store is they're responsible for everything that's put on their store. And so our question is, what does that responsibility mean? We believe that responsibility may translate into compensation for Fatu.
What is the process like? Where do you start now? Because obviously the Kuwaiti side is waiting and the applications are also waiting.
Well, frankly, I don't know what they're waiting for, because of the reporting that was done by the BBC reporters, which was amazing. You would think that people would currently be in prison for this, but unfortunately there has been no real motivation to go after the people that were involved in this human trafficking scheme. A couple days ago, I actually just downloaded the For Sale app, so it's still available on Apple and Google stores. So no one's been really punished for this. And so now that, I'm representing Fatu, now we can really push for prosecutions and push for civil liabilities against people that are involved in this.
We understand there's also a lot of a huge psychological impact because of the way the girls are advertised, the way they are described on those apps.
Definitely. In addition to breaking Kuwaiti law and Guinea law, as well as international conventions against basic human rights standards, it's just simply disgusting the way that people were being advertised. On the app, they show people's pictures, they give their age, you could scroll down and look people up by their country that they're from. They give their religious affiliations, their marital status. They put things on, and the way things are written on the app, it's written in a very third person sort of way. So it's written like, for instance, I saw on the app, it says, she doesn't need a holiday. She has 3 kids. She's a happy worker. Nothing is from a first person, and they have these poor women that they're taking pictures of them, unbeknownst to them, and placing them on this app without their permission.
Do you come across many cases like this? I'm trying to figure out how widespread it is.
Well, unfortunately, slavery is a worldwide phenomenon. It's been reported by the UN that there's more slaves now than there ever have been. So as was reported with this particular case, there's over 700,000 domestic workers in Kuwait, which is obviously a huge number. I would gander that a large portion of those workers were in the same position that Fatu was in. And it is a huge problem. But the way to fix it is, frankly, to make sure that people are found accountable for being involved in these things, such as going after people criminally, such as going after people civilly, and making sure that the victims of these crimes are compensated as well.
All right. Kimberly Motley, thank you for taking time to talk to us and Focus on Africa. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
BBC Africa will be following up this story with the authorities in Guinea. If you want to see the full-length report, you can go to BBC Arabic's YouTube page. The documentary is in Arabic with English subtitles. Now, in Cameroon, rescuers are still looking for survivors after a landslide in the western region of Bafoussam killed over 40 people. The death toll is expected to rise as hope of finding more people trapped in the rubble fades. The landslide happened on Monday night after heavy rains battered the region. President Paul Biya has expressed condolences to the bereaved families. The BBC's Kilian Ngala went to visit Bafoussam and sent this report.
Pascal Ngele is battling for life at the Bafoussam Regional Hospital. He is one of the few people who survived Monday's landslide that swept through Ngwashe, a locality in Cameroon's west region.
I was lying on my bed, then I discovered sun-dried bricks were falling off the wall and landing on the bed, and there were cracks on the floor. I shouted to wake up the rest of the family. The house was sinking. I tried breaking the door with an axe, but it was too late. The house crumbled on us. Neighbors had to come and dig us out.
Rescue operations continue, but each passing minute brings less hope that any will be found alive. The soil gave way following heavy rains that has been battering the hilly, fragile locality for over 1 week now. But the collapsing soil wouldn't have had such devastating impact if building regulations were applied, according to the regional governor, Augustine Fonka Awa. This woman says she has lost her children and grandchildren, and even as more landslides threaten this locality, she says she doesn't know where to go. Authorities have promised to relocate the endangered populations to a new settlement site, but have not yet determined where exactly. President Paul Biya has expressed sympathies with the bereaved families, offering them a sum of $34,000 as compensation. As the rains continue, there are fears there could be a repeat of this disaster. The government has stepped in, asking people to vacate the area, but observers say a sustainable solution can only be a strict application of the law. In the quarters, the people continue to mourn their dead. Kilian Gala, BBC News, Bafoussam.
Well, in just a few hours' time, South Africa, the continent's second biggest economy, could see itself relegated to junk status by Moody's credit rating agency. Now, that would mean dropping below an acceptable investment grade, with unemployment at its highest rate in 10 years, erratic power supply and stagnant growth. The country's economy is teetering on the brink. The BBC's Vumanim Kize reports from Johannesburg.
It's time to wake up and smell the coffee. Small business owner Sihle Makubane believes the ailing South African economy needs an urgent wake-up call from its decade-long slumber. However, it's going to take much more than coffee to jumpstart this economy. Sihle runs 3 coffee houses across Johannesburg, and with a possible downgrade to junk status by ratings agency Moody's looming, Sihle fears his import-reliant business will suffer.
Coffee grows in Africa, from Africa, and then goes to America. Then from America, we buy that coffee directly from them. So if we get a downgrade, that means we're going to take a huge punch. That means in the business, in order for us to survive, we need to pass it on to the consumer, which makes the coffee more expensive.
Analysts say it would be a disaster for the country if it lost its investment rating, and the effects would be felt instantly.
So downgrade immediately would result in an obligation on holders of government debt to sell on those mandates. That would lead to a sell-off in the bond market. A sell-off in the bond market means higher interest rates, and that money would leave the country, which means a weaker rand. So higher interest rates and a weaker rand for you and I in the street means higher cost of borrowing, higher car debt, higher home debt, cost of debt, and inflation imported through the weaker rand.
The big elephant in the room for South African market watchers is the Eskom question and what to do with the power utility's $30 billion debt.
We cannot continue to throw money at Eskom. I think everybody agrees.
In his medium-term budget speech in Parliament this week, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni took the tough approach.
Once I'm convinced that the Eskom board and management have made an irrevocable commitment to the implementation of the government decisions and that there is enough progress, we'll negotiate the appropriate size of debt relief. Eskom is a business and it should be run like a business.
Small business owners like Sihle are at the coalface of South Africa's economic malaise, bearing the brunt of currency volatility and persistent power outages. While these businesses are resilient, the situation has to improve if they are to thrive. Vumani Mkize, BBC News, Johannesburg.
This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Still to come, these Johannesburg school kids give us their predictions for the Rugby World Cup final between England and South Africa. I'm Sophie Ikenye and you're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. The top stories on this program. A BBC investigation finds African domestic workers are being sold in Kuwait via an online slave market on platforms provided by Google, Apple and Facebook. South Africa is awaiting the announcement of a credit rating review in a few hours' time as it hopes to avoid being downgraded to junk status. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Let's find out what's happening in the world of sports, rugby, I guess.
Yes, Sophie, thank you very much. And we are going to talk a lot of rugby in our sports bulletin today, and that, of course, is because it's the final of the World Cup on Saturday in Japan, with two-time winners South Africa taking on England in the showpiece in Yokohama. Anticipation is at fever pitch here in England and in South Africa, where we'll hear from in a moment. For South Africa's sport, and especially rugby, has much broader significance, with race and racial politics always high on the agenda. And a lot has been made of the fact that the Springboks captain, Siya Kolisi, is the first black player to captain the team. He's been speaking to the BBC's sports editor, Dan Rowan.
Sammy, do you feel the weight of history on your shoulders right now?
I do at times when I'm sitting by myself, but I'm just focusing on the game. That's the only way I can calm myself, you know. And I think I'll think more about that all after the game.
Would this surpass 95, do you think, if South Africa win?
I don't know. I can't say because 95 was special, you know, and it's done a lot for our country, and I'll never take that for granted.
What would this do, though, if you were to win for the country?
What it's doing already, you know, I haven't seen support like this for our team in a very long time, you know, since 2007, and it's really special. And I don't think anyone outside South Africa understands what this means to us. And I've seen it, I've seen bits of it, you know, I haven't seen all of it yet, and I know tomorrow's going to be more special for the country.
Well, it's a thrilling prospect of a game, of course. Two stellar teams going head-to-head for the biggest prize. Sia there talks about the support from back home. Our correspondent Milton Nkosi has been finding out the mood on the streets of Johannesburg.
South Africa in the Rugby World Cup final. It is fever pitch even in the schools of Johannesburg. And this answer to the haka is for England.
I'm wearing my t-shirt so South Africa can win.
Really? And do you think they're going to win tomorrow?
Yes.
Who are they playing tomorrow? Do you know?
It's England.
It's England. Well done.
No, it's New Zealand we're playing against.
Oh, we're playing against New Zealand?
I know now.
Oh, I just didn't realise.
The Springboks have won this cup twice before, and the superstition of the 12-year cycle is in the air. Many believe that they can win this time around, 12 years since they last picked up the cup in France. President Cyril Ramaphosa even sent this bullish message to the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Here at the Pirates Women's Rugby Club, it's practice as usual, but their focus is family on Saturday's final in Yokohama. These rugby players were inspired by the Springbok team in Japan. They are telling me that they are practicing because they want to be chosen to represent South Africa in the Women's Rugby Cup in 2021.
World Cups gives you hope, and hope creates that excitement in the air, and you can feel it. You can feel it in the whole of South Africa. Everybody's excited about Saturday, and we're more united because we're supporting the same team.
And what is your score prediction, Pio?
I think it's going to be a very tight game. I really think we're going to win by 1 point or a conversion or a penalty. So it's either by 1 or up by 2 or by 3. So I want to say 15-16 or 15-17, 15-18.
What is your prediction on who is going to lift that trophy in Tokyo this year? Well, England, you had it for yourself. This is what is happening in Johannesburg. Milton Nkosi, BBC News, Johannesburg.
Great stuff. Meanwhile, 2 South African players, Peter Steph du Toit and Cheslin Kolb, have been named in the shortlist for the prestigious Men's 15th Player of the Year Awards for 2019. Also named on the list are Tim Curry from England, Alan Wynne-Jones from Wales, Ardie Savea of New Zealand, and the USA's Joe Taufete'e. The winner will be presented at the World Rugby Awards in Tokyo, Japan on the 3rd of November. Well, while South Africa may be flying high, all is not well with rugby in Kenya. Property belonging to the Kenya Rugby Union have been auctioned off to repay an outstanding debt. The debt dates back to 2015. The BBC's Lynn Washira reports.
The Kenya Rugby Union offices in Nairobi received unusual visitors on Thursday afternoon when auctioneers arrived, crippling activities at the premises. This follows a debt owed to a Kenyan travel agency on air tickets transacted by the Federation to facilitate the Kenya national 15th team to travel to Brazil to play a test match, as well as facilitate the Spain team to play a test match against the national 15th team in Kenya. The $125,000 debt dates back to the year 2015, after which there has been a change of office.
All these debts are incurred as the union tries to make sure that the national teams get to participate in the games, to compete and participate in the games. Shujaa is scheduled to travel on next week. We still do not have money for that travel. Again, that's another travel that we must make sure that the team goes for because it's an Olympic qualifier.
Speaking to BBC from France, Sports Permanent Secretary Peter Kaberi assured the national 7th team they will travel to South Africa to take part in the Olympic qualifier matches next week. Lynn Washira, Nairobi.
Meanwhile, it's England versus South Africa tomorrow. I can't wait. Sophie, that's your sport.
I can't wait too. So, wait, hang on. If South Africa win this one, will it be bigger than the 1995 or the 2007?
You know what? In 1995, they were coming out of the sporting wilderness. And then in 2007, they established themselves as a big rugby nation. If they win tomorrow, they'll be consolidating 2007. So, you know, bring it on.
I didn't even know about the 12-year superstition.
Yes, so 1995 to 2007, 12 years. 2007 to 2019, 12 years. But they lost to New Zealand in their first game. No team that has lost its first game in the World Cup has ever gone on to win it. So if you're superstitious, there you are.
All right, so let's wait and see what happens tomorrow then. Let's take a quick look now at our top story on Focus on Africa. An investigation by BBC News has discovered that African domestic workers are being sold on the black market in Kuwait using Instagram or apps available on Google and Apple. And that's Focus on Africa for now. Thank you for your company. Bye.